Welcome everyone. I think by now I think people are still trickling in, but let's get started. I already shared a bit earlier, but if you just joined, feel free to share where you're dialing in from and what you hope to get out of today. And I will share one final time that we are recording the session. So if you don't want your video material in the session itself, please turn off your camera. For now, we'll share a bit about the agenda that we will be covering today. So we will start with the 2026 talent trend predictions. We have a great panel that will be discussing this together with some key data on global skill strategies will be shared. And we will end, of course, with the theme of AI-enabled organizations and HR's role within that. I just heard that one of our speakers, Perry, has just come from a 2-day offsite event, so he'll bring fresh insights, hopefully from this topic. And happy to hear, Renate, that you are looking so forward to hearing the insights today. Before we dive in, let me do a very short introduction of who you're talking to and who's hosting today. So, my name is Sam Prevo. I work as the head of enterprise at Lepaya, covering our big strategic upskilling initiatives with my team. And Lepaya is a global learning company. I think we specialize the best in organizing learning at scale with measurable behavioral impact tied to business goals. So you'll see that in everything we do, we talk about how do we measure it, how do we go to return on investment, and how do we make it concrete? Because we accelerate business, we have huge business impact. But if we don't show it, then of course we can also not get the recognition for it, and we get into trouble. So that's a bit about Lepaya in a nutshell. We have a great panel today, so I'm very enthusiastic to share with you who will be here today. And maybe you can all combine your personal introductions with your own view on the trends that will be impacting this year and the following year. Tamar, may I ask you to start?
Yeah. Yeah, so my name is Tamar, based in lovely Amsterdam, as already mentioned in the chat. I'm a psychologist and started working for Just Eat in the summer of 2024, so nearly 2 years. And I'm responsible for the product and tech domain and the UK and Ireland segment. And from my perspective, in terms of the defining trends for 2026, I think that will be that we need to prioritize on what we call the curiosity umbrella. And it really focuses on AI and data literacy, change mindset, and critical thinking. And I believe we really need to move beyond the simple awareness and really focus on transitioning from the basic AI knowledge to practical mindset-driven adaptation that really solves the real business problems. But then at the same time, we need to really build this capability, and it really requires a foundation of trust. We need to make sure that employees understand that AI is a tool that's really meant to amplify their work and not really replace them, which then encourages hopefully authentic collaboration between the human and the technology. So that really creates a vital balance, right? So we really need sometimes to mandate AI usage, but we also must double down on critical thinking. So it's not enough to just use the tool. Employees must be responsible for really scrutinizing the outputs, questioning its accuracy, and deciding if it's truly useful for the task at hand. And that's where we come in from the L&D perspective. We really need to guide employees in this journey.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tamar. That's a great introduction and fully agreed and aligned, right? If we massively upscale the adoption of AI, but we don't upscale critical thinking, then it will probably impact us not just in an optimizing and efficiency way, but might also harm innovation, creativity, etc. Right? So great thoughts. Thank you. That's very interesting. Missy, would you like to follow that up with your introduction and your view?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here today. I'm Missy. I'm American, but I've been living in Paris now for about 14 years, so I'm very much a local. I currently lead people experience at Pigment, which is a Series D SaaS company. And the funny thing is, I ended up in HR by accident. I studied translation and linguistics and cultural anthropology in school, and most of my career was spent working in customer service. And I made the pivot in my last scale-up experience, and when my CPO joined, and she thought, "Hey, you might be good at L&D. You should switch into HR." And so that's how I moved, and it was very, very fast. And it turns out that all those years I spent obsessing over the user and customer experience isn't super different to me obsessing over the employee experience. So that's where I'm at. And I'm gonna echo tomorrow. I'm not gonna elaborate too much, but to be honest with you, everybody, like we are experts in L&D and we have been saying this for years already. So we've been ahead of the predictions skills, like critical thinking, problem solving, judgment, empathy. These are all human skills. We've been tapping into these for so long, and now I think with this revolution happening, they're now becoming role. But what is it going to give us here? I don't have the answers to that, but we're gonna kind of chat about it today. So that's about me.
Great, thank you, Missy. Great perspective, and welcome to the field. I think it's a great example of the impact that great leaders can have on us, right? They can see potential with us that we might not have recognized ourselves yet. So very, very nice. Thank you. Perry, last but not least, would you like to share a bit about yourself?
I will. Thank you, Sven, and thanks to everybody who's joined. And it is clearly a hot topic. So, yes, that 2 days I've just spent immersed with HR leaders, the whole concept of skills and learning was threaded throughout pretty much everything. So, it is a really ubiquitous kind of conversation. It's everywhere. Yeah, so I started my life a little bit like Missy. I came into the profession by accident. I started my life in the government service on the legal side and ended up doing technology projects. So I was a user who would specify system change, would test user computer generated versions of it, and then make sure that it was then applicable. And I'd help people learn how to use it. And it was the learning thing that got me into the HR world about 23 years ago. Yeah, where I'm seeing this, and I've kind of been asked for a prediction on what HR's likely kind of signature trait should be in 2026. And it is about experimentation as a capability. So I think there's really something in the whole sense that we have a very confusing world, as Missy said. We've been predicting some of this. We've been urging businesses to get behind things like human skills, and now it feels like the tsunami of opportunities. People are starting to wake up to it, but they don't have the answers, and nor do we. And the only way we will do that is if we experiment our way through things, so that there's this iterative, contained but probing sense of what value we're trying to create, and how people can kind of learn in that flow and in that contained environment. So to Anouk's point on critical thinking, you could sit in a classroom and try and teach people critical thinking all you like, but give them a great piece of work where they've got to test their critical thinking, and you can kind of make mistakes and learn in real time and not do any damage. That's the sense of where I think we are headed from this report, actually, so that we've got more live labs. We are creating environments where people come together with a very clear sense of what they're there to learn and do, that they can test hypotheses, they can work in that flow, they can really start to see impacts that are aggregating rather than just a final impact. And we are all the time, I think, adding to our skills stack while we're doing that. But I think the switch we need to make is I'm in experimental mode. I am testing myself. What capabilities am I starting to feel I'm strengthening and that I want to strengthen? And I think that's why I'm wrapping it all up in that whole sense that experimentation becomes a key capability, because we can use systems thinking, behavioral science. We can weave in a number of different things, and we won't know till we try, and we'll get evidence to prove it. So that's my big take from this report, Sven. Thank you.
Great, Perry. Thanks for your introduction, and also already for spotting such an interesting trend. It seems to be a very fine line, right, between experimenting within clear direction, clear boundaries, clear methodology, and not knowing what you're doing and just calling it iterating and being agile.
Yeah,
So I love how you're calling that a skill to actually know
thank you.
what you're doing when you're
Yeah,
experimenting. That's
yeah,
that's cool. That's fascinating.
thank you.
Well, some great. I think the introductions already set us up for a very interesting discussion. So thanks all for sharing already. If we look at the top skills companies are investing in, then as you may have already read in the report, we'll be sharing a bit of a summary here in a very short overview. But if you have not downloaded and read it yet, please, I would recommend to do so and look into the details a bit more. But if we share high over, it's a state of skills report where we analyzed last year's entire year with 196 global enterprises. There were over 28K learners and over 200,000 hours of upskilling. And if we digest all that, then we see an interesting divide with over 50% of all training investment being done in empowering leadership, which is why we'll also dive into that topic a bit in a moment. We also saw that commercial sensitivity had 13%. And after that, we see the intentional learning, by which we mean, of course, the skills like growth mindset, feedback skills, and collaboration and ownership skills. And then the rest was kind of divided into the rest of last piece of the pie. And if we look at then what does that mean year over year, then we see quite an interesting trend in the sense that empowering leadership has definitely got quite a big uptick with 126% growth. And perhaps not entirely surprising, it was complemented with taking ownership also being quite invested. Empower leadership is, of course, sharing accountability, power, ownership with your team, empowering them. So, of course, you should also train your workforce themselves in taking ownership. And we saw an increase in commercial programs, and we saw a decrease in intentional learning and collaboration influence, which is quite fascinating if you think about focusing less on intentional learning than if we connect that to Perry's active experimentation. That is actually an interesting dynamic that we see happening there. Now, before we move into this quite a bit deeper, I would also be interested to hear a bit from the audience and explore which upskilling priority matters the most to you this year, and if that would actually match a bit of what we saw here in the top 3 developments, or if you do something entirely different. If you do something entirely different, please do write in the chat. But let us know in the poll, and we'll share it in a bit. I see you all rapidly filling it in, so thank you for that. And some interesting results are appearing. I see no one so far saying other priorities. So as we are heading forward, there we go. One person is having 2 people have different priorities. Thank you all for sharing. Let me share the results with you, and there you will see that 45% of you all is indeed strength and leadership capabilities. Then, as we see the 28% in ownership, and then we see indeed the commercial sensitivity, or all of the above. And a few of you are doing different things. So please indeed let us know in the chat what these different things are that you're doing. I see Inske saying critical thinking. Absolutely interesting and fascinating in the sense that, as we already discussed in the intro, if you train in AI adoption, but you do not train in critical thinking, what does that mean for your workforce if AI will massively influence your thinking and thus your performance? So Inske, that's an interesting trend to add indeed. Looking at Manuela, digital skills, commercial skills, not necessarily only sales skills, definitely, right? I would also be curious to hear later if that also means commercial for non-commercial, in the sense that we need to be more client-centric focused also internally. But for now, I'd love to hear open up the discussion to the panel as well. If you look at these patterns that we're seeing here, if you look at also what the audience has said, which trend matters the most to you in the panel? Maybe Tamara, you would like to start with share a bit about your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Sven, of course. So yeah, when I look into these patterns, I think that the trend that stands out most to me is the clear link between empowering leaders and employees taking ownership. So at Just Eat or Jet, how we actually call ourselves, we treat accountability as a core value behavior, and it's really integrated into our cultural mindset. rather than that it would be a standalone skill actually. So we really look for proactive problem solving and critical thinking, and it's actually a cultural expectation. So these two trends for me go hand in hand, right? Because giving people more agency also requires leadership to step away from micromanagement and move towards autonomous, value-driven execution. And that's why we need to keep training managers too, in order to achieve that people can take that accountability and ownership, right? So it makes all the sense in the rules to me.
Love it. Thank you, Tamar. Indeed, right? If we train our workforce to step forwards and our leaders then step forward also, that's going to be tricky, right? Missy, how about you? Would you like to add on to this?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna take it in a different direction actually, because and I'm talking specifically about where I'm at in my role today and what I'm seeing at my company, but it's gonna be around taking ownership, and it's in a variety of different ways. I'm thinking one specifically though, which I refer to as builder autonomy, and we call that vibe coding. So we're living in a time where people can solve their own problems and they can do it fast. Not waiting for long RFPs with vendors and during these long processes to implement the software that doesn't fully work or it's not what you signed up for. A lot of times we're in L&D, we're trying to find the right way to bring the fish to go where the fish are, and the fish are always swimming away from us. And so we can use AI now to custom build our own tools for tracking, for products, for custom workflows. To give you an example, I built my own onboarding app with Lovable in 2 days. And so the autonomy of this is not just, behavioral, but it's also technical. And so another thing that I'm going through is like when everyone has this opportunity to build, then what happens? You need to have very strong governance. You need to have clarity. You need to understand design thinking. You need to have that like contextual problem solving and judgment. And that's something I'm working on too with our internal IT and security team. I've built this app in Lovable. So what does that mean? How do we approach the governance of upkeep and making sure that it evolves with the organization as it moves fast? And I feel like a lot of organizations today are trying to really like raise the floor when it comes to AI, prompt literacy, and having everyone do these like 101 trainings. But I think it's really about this specifically. I'm taking a real life scenario and a problem I'm building, and then I'm just taking it back to the teams to influence.
Great. Many thanks, Missy. Barry, is there anything you would like to still add here?
Yeah, I think the collaboration side of things sinking quite rapidly was a little bit of a shock to me, because I think we've been talking about social learning for a long, long time. And I guess what Missy's just illustrated there, I think, is a sense that what we are doing is we are taking charge of it ourselves a lot more. We aren't seeking validation from peers all the time, and even subject matter experts, because we can create a subject matter expert with our bot. We can say, tell me about this, and you shorten the curve of assimilating that information so you can do something yourself with a degree of authority. Sure, you want to test it, right? You might not know it, even if you have just been kind of exposed to that kind of information. But I wonder whether that's dialed down the collaboration side of things. And I think it does talk to the fact that as we start to get a little bit more confused by the possibilities, right? Experimentation in yourself and a bot will only get you so far, right? You then need to throw it out to people and say, let's kick this round, let's shape this up. And I go back to methodologies like Jake Knapp's sprint methodology at Google X, where you do a 5-day immersive, where you absolutely build a solution, but you absolutely bring people into that equation. We will probably see a reversing of that, but that was quite a surprising realization from this work, that it's sunk that much.
Great. Thanks, Barry. I mean, that's a lot of knowledge and content to already take home, right? So and a lot of work for us all to be doing. Maybe let's deconstruct just part of it to give the audience a bit to take home. So if we look into the empowering leadership, I also saw a question arising already on what is this empowering leadership definition. And maybe one of you three would also like to add a bit there. I think we from Lepaya call it basically the ability to share responsibility, share ownership, and empower your entire workforce to kind of become a multiplier and not be the one who is calling the shots all the time. Therefore, indeed, as was discussed earlier as well already, that you want to move away from that micromanagement and empower people. And I think if you look at this from the literature point of view, it is. I think the definition is roughly around the same. You distribute autonomy, you distribute responsibility, and you distribute decision making to go from that hierarchical control-based leadership into the actual empowering leadership. It is a trend, I think, that's most visible in knowledge, high, complex problem-solving, complex organizations, which is also the largest client base of Lepaya, where we very, very strong in finance, professional services, and tech. But maybe you would like to add. I see, Perry, you've also muted. Maybe you can also share a bit on your definition here before we dive in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you, Sven. And I come from this at about 20 years of research in self-managed organizations who disassemble the hierarchy. They're very flat, non-hierarchical. They work in holacratic circles. They are almost agile by definition. But within that, there can be some confusion about who owns, who has agency, and who has ultimate accountability and responsibility. And I think the word empowering has a double edge, right? Because it feels like people are enabled, but equally it feels like you've been given that power and you can equally have it taken away. It's a very ambiguous sense. And that's why I think understanding what we are empowering people to do is so critical. I'm going to use an example that people might realize. When Satya Nadella took over from Steve Ballmer at Microsoft, he said, we need to move from a know-it-all management kind of paradigm to a learn-it-all management paradigm. Massive shift, because I think he was recognizing that managers having all the power and all the knowledge wasn't the case. And it was much more about what can we do collectively and admit actually that some of this stuff is emergent and new and there's no precedent and we don't have the playbook for it. So I think an empowering leadership style is actually an invitation for people to participate more in making decisions, in taking accountability, in being creative within confines that are kind of safe and are de-risked. But it requires a lot of contracting conversations between people, and whether that's peers or managers, to just understand this is the norm, but what are we deviating into here? So I think it's an ongoing dialogic thing, right? You can't just say you're empowered and expect people to do it. That's actually quite confusing sometimes. So I think clarity is absolutely key in here, and backed up with what we've been talking about, coaching styles, no command and control. And again, really looking at the sense that the situation you're in is probably so unique. You need to kind of craft your way through it together. That in itself is a form of empowerment.
Yeah, very interesting. And I love also your trend from know it all to learn it all. I think that's a great way to summarize it. And I think it also ties into a nice question from the audience that might be nice to just weave in, because Lev asked us which leadership skills of this can be trained, and which are personality traits which you either possess or not. So this might be an interesting one to look into. I must say, so before my 5 years at Lepaya, I was an assessment psychologist for 7 years. So this is a question to my heart, in the sense of what is personality traits, what is the blueprint of people, and how much can we actually build upon the blueprint, and how much is developable, which Missy added to that. Can you develop it through self-awareness? So I have good and bad news. The good news is that empowering leadership to a large extent can be developed. You do see different flavors. In that sense, for example, how dominant and extroverted you are does influence how your empowering leadership looks like. Some will have natural more weight and be more expressive, and will really have to learn to, indeed, through self-awareness, through feedback, to develop themselves in a way that they don't take the floor continuously and take up space. And the key thing here, that's the good news, is that there's a lot of hope for developing this empower leadership. other from the personality traits and your blueprint that is fixed. And the key thing to do and the key thing to teach leaders is, in that sense, nothing new from maybe 2 decades ago, is that you need to organize a feedback culture around yourself, because the more senior leaders become, the less feedback they get and the more confirmed they are in their thinking. So it's the empowering leadership can itself also become undermining and less effective if it's done in isolation without feedback, because then you still have secretly the leader in control, but just not in a different shape. So that's the number one advice for any leader, to make sure that you, indeed, the self-awareness that Missy alluded to already, how you can enable, how can you adapt, is organizing that feedback culture around yourself as a leader to make sure you stay open. I see some comments already in the chat. Is there anything the crowd would like to add before I move into this question itself? I see no. So then let's dive into a bit and hear what's driving these strategic choices. So maybe we can ask you, Perry, since you already alluded a bit before we go to the rest, what with Empower Leadership Training accounting for over half of all investments, and we just concluded that this seems to be quite important. Why do you think training leaders has now this year has become such a dominant priority all of a sudden?
The statistics might tell you that we've always been throwing a lot of revenue at this, but I think the outcomes of it have been very questionable. But I think what we're recognizing is that the role of a leader and a manager is now so different to what it was even 5 years ago. So yes, we've had the pandemic shock, and that kind of really forced us to think, what do we mean by managing and leading when it's remote or it's key workers who need a different form of protection, right? So all of a sudden, the human was back at the center of what the manager and the leader is there to do. And then the snapback where people tried to say, let's all get everybody back to the office like it was in 2018. It's like it was trending towards flexibility anyway. So why would you do that? So I think there's a little bit of a puzzling dilemma about whether that is not only commercially right, but whether that's culturally sensitive. And I think what we've started to see now is the traditional ways of schooling leaders in a quite linear way just will not cut it, right? From day one, as a leader or a manager, you are immersed in a whole sense of a social construct as well as a business flow. And we are asking them to be much more multidisciplinary than even we did before. That's kind of unfair. So I think we've got to back them up and help them out. And I think the sense of the empowering leadership thing is, the best way for you to learn rather than being schooled is to work with your team about how do we contract with each other, who's got the expertise I can rely on, what do we all need to lean into and learn together. And you become much more sort of leveled with the team. You're not at the apex, you're in the center of it, and you're directing energies, you are having conversations, you are making sure you're giving good real-time feedback. You don't go through the same predictable mechanical mills of what a manager does and tick them off. Now you've got a sense every day, where are we, what are we doing, what's hot, what do we know, what don't we know, how well did we do yesterday? I've used the analogy that a lot of leaders particularly have become like scrum coaches now, really in the thick of the flow and really sensing adaptation and pivots and adjustments, because that's what the world demands. It is so unpredictable. So I think that's what's growing it. There is no playbook. We've got to build it as we go.
Indeed. Thanks, Barry, for sharing. And I think looking at the chat, Missy seems to quite agree with you there. And it seems that the poll, I will share the results, also kind of says the same thing, in the sense of the reason are all over the place. It's engagement, it's change resistance, it's the need to accelerate. So indeed, it is maybe one core thing, empower leadership, but it impacts so many different variables.
Multidisciplinary. Yeah, definitely. That proves it, right? That says we are trying to hit a lot of bases at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe it might be nice to now move a bit forward and look at how this looks like in practice, because we have a small case study from Just Eat Takeaway, and maybe Tamara, you would like to talk us through how you're putting this into practice, actually.
Yeah, for sure. And this is something I'm also very proud of. So, and as a psychologist, I love the leadership topic as well. So if you can, Stop me, Sven, if I'm too passionate about this this one. But this is indeed something we implemented in JET, and it's called the Manager Accelerator Program. And maybe on the next slide, you can see, where we started back in 2023 already. So before my time at JET, I was also sitting in the assessment business. So after that, I joined Just Eat. And I really was impressed by the fact that they also went to the managers themselves to ask, hey, what is it that you would like to learn, right? Because from our perspective, from the HR and L&D space, I think we all understand what managers should be doing when it comes to people management skills. And it is predominantly for first-time managers, where we see that big gap between being a high-performing individual contributor and then being the first-time manager, right? And we assume that you need the same skills, but actually you really require a different skill set. And these topics that you see here on this slide, they are not new probably, right? This is around feedback. It is about coaching. It is about impactful communication and also voicing that message that the top leaders have created in order to achieve the strategy, in order to embrace that and also stand for it, right? And that is difficult, but because there can be emotion as well. But we want managers to be more rational and be able to explain. But that can be very, very hard. So this is actually what our managers then told us, like collectively, right, across JET. So not just within product and tech or in any segment, but collectively. So we knew, okay, we need to come up with an intervention. We need to offer a certain training where we can actually, make sure that this is the needs that they feel, that we can cater for that. And then on the next slide, maybe some insights. So we created, together with Lepaya, obviously, we created 4 modules. And they were lying on the shelf, basically, wonderful modules. But how to activate managers and how to activate managers of managers to really make sure that they nominate their people managers. And that's always an issue, right? Because of time and actually having that priority and making sure that people keep on learning. Because at the end of the day, the job wins, and you could have the intention to learn, but in the end, the action is not there. So then at the end of 2024, then I really decided, we need to go in and we need to make this kind of mandatory. Because if we are not doing that from the HR perspective, they will not do it either. And that's not judgment, it's just a reality, right? Because code needs to be written, new features need to be developed, bugs need to be fixed. So it makes all the sense of the world that they would not maybe free up their time for certain modules when it comes to learning. So we have around 250 managers in the people and tech, in the product and tech space. And we told them, look, you need to do 2 modules this year because we would like to speak the same language. We would like to make sure you all have the same understanding of the models that we apply. And we would like also, raise the bar a little bit. And that was something new. We have never done that before. So we really want to make sure that the journey was nice as well, right? So not only you have to do this and afterwards we will measure the impact, but we really want to engage with them. So in advance, we told them, look, you can choose 2 modules yourself out of the 4. And these are about communication, feedback, coaching, and well-being. And speak with your manager in terms of the topic where you can grow the most. So not what you like the most, but really where you can improve from a personal and professional perspective. So we have done that. We did some matching. We did 2 cycles. 1 cycle before summer this year, in 2025. It's already 2026. 1 cycle before summer and 1 cycle after summer. And we were a little bit curious. I think we tried to activate a curious mindset. So we were curious what the results would be, right? Like, would people actually appreciate it? And we measured that in advance. We measured it right after they had their training session, and we measured it 4 to 6 weeks after in order to see, okay, do you like it? What do you think of the training? And we actually saw some quite high scores, right? So, well, we actually pushed people into this. They really, really appreciate it. So I think that's a really, really good sign. And then on the next page, I think that is what matters for us the most, right? Because we want to measure return on investment. And I think every company should do that. And that's what I also really appreciate working with Lepaya, that they also help us to try to give that more objective figures, right? Because it's hard to really measure the impact of development. But we had a few questions, and it is self-led, obviously. It is a self-rating. But we did see an improvement in managers' confidence, managers applying the skill, and feeling more effective. And this is actually data from around 230-ish people, right? And it is hard to get data in, but we saw some higher figures from the second cycle versus the first cycle. But collectively, I think people really, really appreciated that we spent the budget, that we made them do it, and that they also recognized that certain insights not necessarily are new, but they are refreshed in their minds, right? And I think if we can keep that momentum, if we can keep that occurrence, that we maintain that bar and that we make sure that people feel comfortable, because I think also well-being is such an important topic for managers to take care of for their direct employees, but also for themselves, that they understand, hey, I'm actually good at this job and I am capable of being a good people manager while also managing the task at hand, right? And that is something that I'm very, very proud of. And I think we should definitely look for other topics as well, because you can always further improve. And especially like Barry already mentioned, there's so much on the plate of a manager, what they have to do. And managing people in itself is such a challenging thing, let alone contributing to the strategy and making sure that they follow the strategy of the company and make it work within their smaller teams. So it can be done actually. 250-ish people program, and for different countries as well, right? Because we're not in one country. So that's what we did in 2025. So happy to further proceed with this in 2026.
Thank you, Tamar, and great to hear how you put this into practice. And I love also, as Perry also said in the chat, and you pointed out, the increase in manager confidence is so important. I think Bandura already told us in the 90s that mastering a skill is something different than being confident in a skill, and you won't apply the skill as effectively if you do not actually complement it with confidence. So the self-efficacy is super important. Thank you. So we, of course, are as Lepaya also innovating continuously, and also have innovated our management development. So if you would like to just understand already a bit about how we are doing that, I think on the next page you can scan the QR code and hear a bit about how we developed our AI leadership program, which covers a lot of what has been discussed so far. In the sense of how this all the way at the beginning we talked about how do you effectively learn how to experiment, but then with product thinking, with a template, with structure, with thoughts. How do you evaluate? How do you think something is a success? How do you celebrate? How do you also kill? We launch too many initiatives and we don't always stop in time or kill our darlings, so to say. Yeah, so feel free to scan, and we'll also share this again in the end if you haven't had the time. But let's move on towards, I think, the second topic, taking ownership as a skill, having become increasingly important in our strategies. And taking ownership is, of course, focusing employees on proactively spotting opportunities, independently solve problems, collaborating without constant oversight. So it's more than just stepping up. It's definitely also the skills to be able to step up. Again, with the confidence, you will be able to step up better than us. So maybe also to the panel, ask what if you see companies reduce these collaboration skills and see them increasing taking ownership for the first time in the top 5, interestingly enough. What do you think is driving this emergence? And maybe Missy, you would like to share a bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, of course. So for me, taking ownership really comes down to three things, and that's focus, efficiency, and your control of output. And the organizational design choice that you make is either going to enable those things or it's really going to kill them. So at Pigment, we run an intentionally flat structure. Our founders were very, very adamant on this. We've deliberately removed a lot of those traditional layers of decision making because we fundamentally believe that speed is actually a competitive advantage for us. And you can see that directly in our business results. In 6 years, we've fully disrupted financial planning and we're almost at 100 million ARR. So we we even tell people when they come in, we want you to think like a founder. And what does that mean? It means having agency to make decisions for the business, weigh those trade-offs, and move like they do within your own realm of work. And for us, like that flatness is only going to work if people are genuinely like internalizing what they have authority to do. And so on day one on our company onboarding, I run a session with every single newcomer. I walk them through our OKRs for the year, but not just what they are. I don't just like list them, but it's how we're going to achieve them. So like the philosophies, the values that underpin them. And for me, this is really about closing that psychological distance very early. I want to set them up for success. I want them to know, like from, 1 minute of being in that session with me, that they have the autonomy to move the needle. And they can connect that from their daily actions to like this overall company goal. And then a huge part of this too is like feedback culture. We actively design for it. We're very intentional about it. We have a very strong feedback culture at Pigment. And actually, I ran a workshop a few months back where we mapped out like all of the moments where we formally or informally asked for feedback so that we can really bake this into the important moments. And we saw, across the board that we're asking for so much of it and giving them the opportunity to share about the ownership that they have and to take more initiative. And that really, for me, develops from this environment. We're sending out, we're receiving the signals, but we're sending it back to them, that trust and failure is important and not evidence against them. So we've been really trying to build out for day one. And adding AI into all of this is more urgent because now they can move so much faster. It used to require so much collaboration and stakeholders, and it still does. I'm not saying it doesn't, but that scope of what one person can achieve to move those goals has expanded so much more and at an exponential rate. And, as we say, Perry told me this phrase, sludge in and sludge out. We have to build these foundations. We have to make sure that it doesn't create a mess on top of a mess. So being really clear about that is super important.
Great. Thanks, Missy, for sharing. I think that also creates a lot more, it gives a lot more color, right? To, I think ownership is a very much used term, but I think you just gave it a lot more definition and color in what it actually means and also how to actively grab it instead of just shout about it, right? Or talk about it. So thank you.
Exactly.
I think that is a nice bridge also in the last topic, which is definitely also an important topic, is as we reach into the AI-enabled organizations. And I think Greg, I think he's here as well. He once quoted, I think is still a great quote. AI will raise the floor, but human skills will raise the ceiling. Everyone will use AI. Everyone will raise their efficiency, but that does not mean, in that sense, that will automatically bring a competitive advantage if everyone's doing it. So still, the human critical thinking, the complex problem solving capabilities that amplify AI impact, not just replace resources to cut costs, shift from building AI-aware workforces to AI-enabled organizations. So also moving beyond the risk analysis, but also actually the value creation. I think HR and L&D are positioned as very strong architects of this transformation. If anything, this is not a tech transformation or tech shift. It is a people shift. So what does this actually require from us? It might be nice before we dive into that to hear a bit from the crowd where they are in their organization AI maturity spectrum. Do you feel you are aware? Is there an understanding of the AI tools and common use cases? Are you already moving a bit further, meaning you actively use AI for productivity and you're building human skills to actually complement it and not just replace? Or do you also definitely move into augmentation, which is just redesigning entire workflows, structurally integrating AI into operations to really move beyond it just being an accelerator of performance and efficiency, but really an accelerator, an amplifier of your business, which is more than just the sum of things. If I look at where things are going, then I see quite a bit of a divide. So let me share a bit what people are saying. I see uh, almost a bit more than one third says we are AI aware, we understand. Then almost the 42% says we are AI enabled, so we actively use it. And only 15% says we actually are augmented, we are redesigning workflows. And 8% is not sure. So I guess in that sense, we could still use a bit of direction on how we become that architect to move forward. Since we just got Barry back from the 2 day offsite to get new inspiration, maybe already
Yeah.
on this very topic. Don't to put pressure on you. Would you like to share a bit about what you think of this?
I will. Thank you. Yes, I'm not surprised by those results. I think we're at the beginning of the augmentation side of things, right? So I'm not at all surprised by that one, and I'm pleased to see that there are lots of people who are enabling and embedding it in some shape or form. Yeah, the last 2 days was definitely a big, strong theme about AI. What came out of it were a couple of things I'll share. One is that there is a sort of an urge from some parts of business, even from within HR itself, that we should own it all. And I think that's absolutely foolish because we do need a lot of technical help. We do need lots of business participation in this. So we ought not be too keen to own the overall agenda. We should own the bits that we know are really vital, like the ethics and the morality and the org design implications and the learning and individual capability. Absolutely right. But we can't do that without our enterprise colleagues. So McKinsey produced a report last year and it left me cold. It was called the Agentic Organization. And all it seemed to do was center everything on bots, except we occasionally clicked through approve process. That's not what a business will be about. That was absolute hype. And it, like I say, it left me cold. But what I do know, and we're seeing this, I love that quote as well about the floor and the ceiling. That's a really nice way to frame it, is that we are seeing people who are accelerating their journey to competence because they've been enabling themselves to use tools to test scenarios, to learn how to do things. So I think we're seeing performance curves that are kind of flattening a bit because people can get to competence a little bit quicker with the knowledge and the almost like the sparring they can do with AI bots. And of course, we can augment work so that we can take away really grindy algorithmic tasks and give us more time to be creative and exploratory and dialogic. That absolutely is helping us. So there is a two-way kind of thing here. We don't just want to AI enable so that we can kind of get rid of people. We want to AI enable so we can do the things we've always wanted to do but never had the capacity to do so. So I think there's some very strong OD systems orientation to that, but we have to accept the fact that we can get there quicker now. And therefore, if we're thinking about building a course program, and what I love about Tamar's is that was focusing on the human side where you need the kind of sense of exploration and dialogic and coaching skills. If it's a technical discipline, you can spar with your bot and start to think about what does that mean and how can I do it. They can't wait for a course. They'll just want to get on with it and start to play with it. So I can see learning and development strategies being much more multifaceted and accepting the fact that individuals can drive their own capability journeys, and we can supplement that with some high touch, high quality human skills and exploration spaces in the way that Tamar described. That I think is a big shift and a real signal of some intentional good stuff that we can do in the profession. And the outcome for that is lots more skilled people who can get on with things in a much more confident and assured and reliable way. So that's where I'm kind of going with that.
Love it. So it sounds like also like we've been asking for a seat at the table for some time and have been increasingly been getting a seat, and it's also turning into a pretty large seat, right? If
Yeah.
I understand you correctly.
Yeah, but I think if we own the whole AI agenda, it becomes an electric chair. So be careful.
Yes, that would be very undesirable, right? That
Oh,
would make
Yeah.
the adventure very short. Then, Missy, would you like to still add something? Also saw a comment of Tamar in chat. Thank you, Tamar.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I already said this at the beginning, but I think of, and I made this mistake myself, just to say that. I think a lot of companies are approaching learning and like HR, this whole AI aware thing is this one size fits all approach to get everyone on the same page as once and to kind of like upskill. And it's like is looking like, prompt engineering workshops for 200 people and lunch and learns about ChatGPT and make sure everyone has tried it once and like how many times are you using AI in your day? And like I really did try this and I even had a use case where with one team, once we actually deep dived into the problem, it wasn't about any of that. And actually they needed to know more about AI with our product. And so that led me down a different path of like, okay, so how can I enable them more on the AI front of what we're actually selling to customers and how they can customize that? And I think like shifting your focus a little bit, partnering obviously with business leaders is super important. And that's one thing I'm working on right now. So right now I'm wondering, we say to people when they come in, we love AI. We want you to be on the offense and the defense with AI. But what does that actually mean? What does that actually mean at Pigment? Like, how do we know what we're expecting for you, and not just for you as a Pigment, but also in your role? I had a really interesting conversation with our growth marketing team because they're doing some insane AI workflows. And I was in our AI cross-functional committee and I was like, wow, I feel really behind. Like it made me have FOMO and I felt like I was being really stupid about it. And then he interrupted me, and I loved that he did that because he was like, by the way, this is my job. Like, I'm supposed to do this. And are you supposed to do that? And I think we need to think about that for all of our roles. Like, just because it's there, do we need to put it in? So we need to be hyper focused on that. And then, of course, like, what does it mean to be the champion for us at Pigment? That's something that we're working on right now. Like, how are we defining those behaviors? Like, what do you do in your day to day? What does the mindset set look like? And then making sure that once we know what that is, making sure it's accessible. So where's like the starting point there? Like how can we make sure the tools are clear and what they need to be using? And then of course designing those strong feedback loops after that and just continuing to iterate. Otherwise, I feel like you get overwhelmed and you can start to put in interventions or as Perry was saying, build things that don't make sense. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Missy. I mean, that's a lot of takeaways to take home today. I think if we look at what we heard you say, the entire panel, it started with the curiosity umbrella that Tamar mentioned, all the way to enabling our leaders, not falling into pitfalls, the offense and defense of AI. So a lot to take away. Let's save some time to also ask the crowd what questions they might still like to ask. So feel free to shoot in the chat if there's anything we did not cover, anything you would like to challenge, anything you're still curious about. And of course, our colleagues will share the LinkedIns of our speakers to allow you to connect afterwards as well and hear more about their interesting thoughts. Because I think we only scratched the surface when the crowd, the speakers, the panel, and us prepared for today. We said an hour. We could do this for 10 hours, and as you can see from the enthusiasm that the panel showed, that indeed we could talk for hours longer. But anything you specific would like to hear more about what you heard today, or anything new thing you would like to ask us, then feel free to put it in the chat. So far, I'm not seeing any questions appear yet. So while we're waiting for questions to pop in, please let us know also in the indeed, Missy, what are the future of retreats? Oh, that's an interesting question, Anouk. The future of
Retreats is
retreats.
in like, are we talking about offsites, like company offsites?
Well, I'm wondering, a lot of the learning we used to do was let's all go to a hotel. And of course, there's some activities, but there's lots of drinks and entertainment. And I'm just wondering, is this going to be bigger, smaller, staying the same? What is happening there? Because I notice everything is smaller, 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 smaller. But my sense is that with the AI world, it's actually more important to really take a team away for a week somewhere all in a container where they can experiment and really learn and collaborative work together. That's my question. What do you see?
That's interesting. I'll say something about that because part of my scope is to design those experiences, and I run our company offsites. And when I joined Pigment, so I'm almost 2 years in, it was one of the more surprising kind of things that I had, or milestones that I had to achieve for the company because so many companies killed those after like the big tech disruption and cost saving. And I kind of asked our founder like what her goals were around keeping these because it is a significant investment and ultimately I think your leadership team needs to believe that your people are your strongest asset and bringing them all together for 3 or 4 days and focusing on building bonds that are going to last outside of the company, creating significant memories. Those are going to enhance the cross-functional collaboration, and that's how we kind of move faster. So for us at Pigment, it's like hands down, we are going on an offsite every year, no matter how big that we get, which is scary for me because we keep growing, but and I'm currently planning the one for this year and next year. So hopefully other companies adapt that.
Thanks, Missy. I fully agree. It's a great question, Anouk, because we, as Lepaya, especially after COVID, we saw an increase in focus, digital learning, scalable learning. And we now see that not necessarily a comeback, but a very focused effort on keeping that moment of connection, being together, the human part. I think those offsites will remain. And maybe indeed even become more important. But definitely where our clients see the possibility, they try to weave in this moments of connection. It isn't you do see it's not necessarily the week anymore, but it is then through months. We have a few moments of weekends or a few moments through the year where people being brought together. Um, Great, thank you all so much for your time, for your attention, and for joining us today. Thanks also a big thank you for the panel for sharing their expertise. I think it was super valuable and very complimentary. So you all had some great insights to take home. I also saw some great questions, which I would have loved to look into as well. Isabel also summed up some nice questions. So let's see if we can share a bit afterwards. But for now, I would like to welcome you to our next webinar where we will share a bit on AI adoption. So if you want to hear a bit more about that, scan the QR code and I'd love to see you there. Other than that, I wish you all a fantastic day and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Well played, everybody. Great. Bye bye bye.